blood is hollering. It's November and the corn is almost in. Mountain uphill, swallow these hills. Line the pockets of the suits on the Capitol Hill. Them all-American girls with all-American curves have had their day in the sun and the rain.
So that was but a taste of a song called All American by Coby Langham and the Citizen Band. I'm Todd Dills, and in today's edition of the Overdrive Radio podcast, I'm going to be heading off again to Long Haul Paul Marhoefer to walk us through the moving, sometimes hilarious writing of trucker-songwriter Langham, whose 2019 Years on the Road EP made some waves around his native Kentucky and beyond. Coby Langham drives for likewise Kentucky-headquartered Downey Sons, a pallet supplier out of Springfield, and he's a proud father of 3. Before we get there, though, I wanted to offer a note of congrats to owner-operator Arian Ruell. Overdrive executive editor Alex Lockie is out today with a story about his beautiful 800 horsepower 1993 vintage Peterbilt 379. The spectacular 80s built sleeper and custom stretch that hauls mostly overweight, sometimes oversized loads out of Pennsylvania to points west and south and back. Lockie caught up with the owner-operator at the Gear Jammer show 2 weeks back in New Hampshire. Here's Ruell running down the story of the Pete.
I bought this truck, I'm going to say, well, we're in 2022, so I would have bought it in 2014. It was 252-inch wheelbase, and we turned it into that. We eventually ended up stretching it to 327 inches, and I acquired the all original 1987 Double Eagle Sleeper.
Wow.
Through his brother-in-law, which would be my wife's, soon-to-be wife's Uncle Chris. I got it on there so she could come out with me more comfortably. We take our dogs with us. That was the reasoning behind putting the sleeper on. But, I mean, the whole outfit, when I'm full of fuel and fresh water, I'm 36.5, which isn't bad for this setup. But it started out life with a mechanical cat in it. I broke the crank. It now has an E-motor in it. We'll just call it a 6NZ. That's not what it is, but we'll just call it that. Yeah, I run Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, and you're coming up out of Kentucky with those. You need the power. Yeah, it's all hills and mountains. And, my favorite part about it, I don't know. I can't pick a favorite part. I just love the way the whole truck came together. I mean, if you want to be technical about it, I guess my favorite part of the truck is not even the truck itself. It's the relationships building the truck.
Right.
And that's why it's named 10 dimes. You know,
Right.
Al Capone said 4 quarters are better than 100 pennies. I'm fortunate enough to have 10 dimes. You know, I got some really good people in my life that.
And so for Ruell, the truck stands as monument to those relationships forged through history in and around and under the piece of equipment. And what a piece of equipment it is. You can catch a few views of it in Alex Lockie's story about Ruell at overdriveonline.com. Navigate to the custom rigs section. You can also find a link to the story in the show notes. And more in the post that houses this podcast for August 12th, 2022 at overdriveonline.com/overdrive-radio. When Lockie was speaking with Ruell, he reflected on the upcoming wedding day the owner-operator had mentioned as a chance to truly feel and communicate the gratitude for a life well lived with all of those you know best and share it with the most. What Lockie didn't yet know?
Yeah,
That's great.
Today.
No way.
That's here. We're getting married here.
No way.
Yeah, we're getting married right on that finish line at 7 o'clock tonight.
Are you kidding?
Yeah. Yep. That was her idea.
Big congrats to owner-operator Arian Ruell and his spouse on the wedding at Monadnock Speedway at Keene, New Hampshire. As for the truck, Ruell noted a lot of his mods were geared toward nodding to its vintage and early 1990s truck.
You know, when we redid it 3/4 of the way this last time, I did want to go back more to 93, which is why I went with the Broadway lights on the sleeper. I didn't run cab lights before we added those. You know, I just wanted to get back to 93 a little bit, and people come up to me, and that's why I left. I mean, I run a slick plate on the fifth wheel, but you still get a little grease on them. That's why I didn't degrease it, because a lot of people don't believe that this truck works. So, I got pictures. You know.
So you got a tux hanging in back there or something?
No, tux the suit.
Suit, yeah, right. It's so hot.
There's a big thanks to Ruell and Alex Lockie for carrying us to the rig. Okay, now on to Downey Sons company driver and singer-songwriter Coby Langham. Our own long-haul Paul Marhoefer will take us through his story via an interview conducted at the Mid-American Trucking Show earlier this year. Here's Paul setting it up.
Ever stumbled across a recording artist on the web whose stuff was so good that you were left dumbfounded by the fact they weren't more widely known? Coby Langham fits squarely in that category. But here's the icing on the cake. He's also a trucker. 2019 had been a banner year for Langham. His EP, Coby Langham and the Citizen Band, Years on the Road, was being mentioned in the same breath as Tyler Childers' Country Squire, as Sturgill Simpson's Sound and Fury by the publication Kentucky Country Music, which named his record one of the Commonwealth's 10 best for 2019. Something seismic was going on in the bluegrass state. One writer had called it a country music insurgency, and artists like Sturgill Simpson and Tyler Childers were at the vanguard. But Langham was quietly making a mark of his own.
A lot of it is, I would consider, honky-tonk music. That's a lot of what I gravitate towards as far as what I listen to. I wanted it to, I just want it to sound like country music.
Flowers are dead, so I threw them out, but those pictures are still in the drawer.
Like when somebody listens to it, I want them to think I'm listening to country music right now. And a lot of as far as the production and the actual sound itself comes from my friend Tom Nato in Lexington, who produced all the stuff we've done so far. And he also played all those steel guitar parts. He, especially the first few things I did coming in as a completely green novice, having no idea what I was doing, he was really good at directing me in the way I wanted to go without me feeling like he was taking over things. You know, he gave me a lot of help without taking control. You know, everything always came out sounding like I wanted it to sound. So Tom Nato was a big part of that.
Them all-American girls with all-American curls have had their day in the sun and the rain.
You're just funding this out of your trucking wages, aren't you? Or do you have like patrons, or how are you putting out this great sound?
Yeah, it's pretty much all coming from money I scraped together. The first EP, I did some like pre-sales on the album and sold a bunch of t-shirts and stuff like that, and that helped me scrape together the money to get it done. And also my bandmates were totally contributing their time. You know, nobody was getting paid. We were paying for studio time, and I was paying Tom to produce. But Zane and Jason, my bandmates, were contributing their time, and we just kind of scraped it together. There wasn't any financial backing or anything like that. Most of it was just money I was able to save up, you know, with the truck. And it's not, even if you do it as cheap as possible, it's not cheap still, if you want to do it right, as far as I'm concerned. So if I could have what I wanted, I'd have somebody give me a big check and say, go make a record. But I think with limited finances, we were able to kind of get what we wanted to do done.
So your friends, Jason, and what was the other gentleman's name?
Jason Sinkhorn, who is a fantastic songwriter in his own right. You can look him up and find a bunch of amazing material. And Zane Hilton. That's kind of been our core group. We've had a few different drummers, and when able, we'll add a steel player, a fiddle player. But Zane and Jason and I have been kind of the core group of the band.
Yeah, I mean, wow, that's a true friend right there. I wonder if they need another trucker friend. I mean, no, I'm just kidding.
They would be happy to play music with you, I can assure you.
Yeah, but I've seen you on this Red Barn. Yeah, it's amazing what you can do now with the internet. So I just sort of went down the Coby Langham rabbit hole and found everything I could find on you, and then come to realize that our friends at Landline, they were already on this story 2 years ago, but you're still out there and you're still making music. And this was sort of a spur of the moment interview, and if I had a little more time, I would have written down some of the songs that really stood out. But there's this one about it's a lady's name, The Truck. Is it Kathy Ann?
Sally Ann the Coal Truck.
Sally Ann the Coal Truck. That is such a lonesome song.
Ballad of the Coal Truck starts in 1985. Kenworth on the side of the hood, she was a W9. 3406B Caterpillar under the hood. Real black smoke when you started her up just like she should.
That song came from an idea that was put in my head by a gentleman who I used to cross paths with out in western Kentucky. He drove a coal bucket, and I never knew his name, and we never met in person. We would just talk on the radio. He had a recognizable truck, so when I was out that way, if I saw him, I'd holler at him on the radio. And one day, he wasn't even talking to me, he was talking to someone else. I heard him telling the story about this old truck driver who ran off the road into this pond, and he was getting really elaborate with it, and I don't know how much of it was really true, or you know how that goes. But it just kind of put that idea in my head about, and it was a couple years later before I wrote the song, but just kind of about how connected we get to our trucks.
Yeah.
Because that's who you spend the most time with, is that truck.
Weekend Sally Ann, she would shine up her chrome. Air in the tires, check her water and blow her horn. Peabody coal dust sure is hard on a girl. New air filter every 2 months so she could breathe in this world. Let the grandbabies play on her when she was home. Jessie's smile so big, she knew she was loved. But 2 million miles ashore takes its toll on a girl. She was feeling her age when they set off for Caneyville.
So, you just really get attached, and sure, we give them names and get pretty close. So, just kind of about that relationship that we have with those big machines.
It's like by the time a truck gets a name, it's almost like you begin to wonder, is it possible for a truck to have a soul? It almost becomes like a sentient being, Now, I remember when I was an old 41, so Bobby Matthews broke it in brand new, and then another guy named Bobby drove it, and then they gave it to me. It was the best truck I ever drove, a 379 Pete, big cat motor. The head gasket needed a new head gasket, and they decided just to do a complete reman, and it was down for a while, and they gave me another truck. Meanwhile, I got my other friend Bobby on to go to work there, and he really loved that truck, and I was pretty satisfied with the replacement truck they gave me, and he asked if he could drive that truck, and it's almost like old 41 just preferred being driven by a dude named Bobby.
Yeah, I know what you mean. A lot of times, if I'm gone on vacation or something and at work, and nobody's going to drive my truck unless they absolutely have to, there's no other options. And when I get that phone call and hey, I'm going to have to drive your truck today, it just well, my truck doesn't know you. It's it's not gonna work right. It's not, you're gonna break something, and but I get, it's like this, your best friend, and you don't want anybody to mess up your relationship. Some new person coming in there and interfering. But I totally get that. We get just very attached.
Yeah, that really comes out in Sally Ann, the coal truck. It was just structurally, what's so interesting to me about that song is the story itself almost takes precedence over the rhyme and the meter. It's like the story is the main thing of that song.
Yeah, I think that, there's not a lot to that song melodically, or it's just straightforward. It's the same melody all the way through, and it was more of one of those songs where I just wrote down a story and then it has some music behind it. There's not a lot of production going on there or anything like that. It's just there's some guitar playing behind this story that's being read, kind of thing.
Curve on 41, her front axle bust. Her and Jesse hit the ditch, there was a lot of dust. The coal was heavy and it pushed them on down the hill. The pond on Miller's farm, where they lie still. They pulled him out, Jesse still had his hands on the wheel. It was hard for most to understand just how he felt. They put what was left of Sally Ann out in his barn, and her name with his on a tombstone in the yard.
That's the focus of that song. It's just that story. It doesn't need a lot of other things going on with it.
Seems like those are the songs that stick with a guy the most, where the music was almost incidental to the story, and the music was just there to attempt to support the story, and just enough music. So that's not something you would probably ever put a full band behind. It was just a little bit of that. But I've written songs almost as an act of self-exorcism. In other words, there would be some sorrow in me that, I heard the story of this cattle hauler who on his very last run died. It was his very last week on his very last run. He was going to go get a local job, but he died on his last day at work. And it bothered me so much when I heard this story. I had to write, a song called "You Were a Good Hand" just to get that out of my system. And I sense like, there does seem to be this dynamic in some of your work where some of your songs become almost some sort of cathartic element of a grief in your life.
Oh, for sure. I rarely write anything that isn't coming from some personal experience. That's where 99% of my songs will come from. I have a hard time writing otherwise. So for the most part, anything of mine people listen to, there's a big personal element in there. And that's just, I think for me, that's just where the inspiration comes from. If it's not something that I really personally connect with, I have a hard time writing about it.
I remember the first time I heard 5 by 7, I was on my way to Leesburg, Florida to drop and hook a load of orange juice. And I believed whatever that was really happened to somebody, and it's such an intensely autobiographical song. And I don't know if you're comfortable talking about it. If you're not, I'm not going to press you to, but what a masterpiece of a song 5 by 7 was, because it just cracked me open.
Thank you. That's a big compliment.
Well, the flowers are dead, so I threw them out. But those pictures are still in the drawer. And I want so bad to forget about you. I've got them spread across the floor. Time changes things like the wind blows the leaves. Pain creeped in your door.
I don't mind talking about it. They just turn the lights off on us. It kind of sets the mood.
I had nothing to do with that.
You didn't do that? Now we're back in the light. That song is very personal. I wrote that the first time I was alone after my wife passed. She died from a drug overdose, and it was just like this 6-7 years of all out chaos. And she was the perfect wife, mother, friend, just wonderful person. And it all changed so fast, and I had a really hard time understanding that, because it wasn't a problem that I had. I didn't have a problem with drugs. And then I realized how many other families were going through what we were going through. And it just opened my eyes up, just because I felt like really, early on, well, I don't want to talk about this because I don't want anybody to know where this is going on, But then you realize how many people are dealing with it, and it's something that needs to be talked about, But that song just came from thinking about, her and her struggles, and her trying to stay clean. And, like so many other people, she just, despite all her efforts, she wasn't able to. So that's where that song came from. It was just therapy for me to get it out there. But I really feel like now when I see people, and hear their stories about how they've been able to stay clean, and they've got, so many days or months or years, and it's just a really inspiring to me, because I saw how hard that is firsthand. And so I don't ever mind talking about that song, because I think sometimes it's something people don't want to talk about, but we need to, if you know someone who, and the hard thing is you want to do it for them. You want, like, that's what I thought I could do. I can fix you. You just, let me fix you. And you can't do that. So, if you know somebody's going through addiction struggles, you just have to love them and point them in the right direction and try to be helpful, and hopefully they make the right choices. So that's kind of where that came from.
The more it hurt, I could hear your knees hit the floor. A snapshot of heaven in a 5x7, and eyes that see right through me. A different time that I rewind, you were strong as an old oak tree. Strong as an old oak tree. Chalkboard on the mantle we kept there for you, to leave your words that were true. And when you'd stop by, you'd leave us a sign that you care just as much as you do. You'd write little hearts and leave sweet talks and nicknames in pink and blue, and pictures and frames of younger days when peace was something we knew. A snapshot of heaven in a 5x7, and eyes to see right through me. A different time that I rewind, you were strong as an old oak tree. Strong as an old oak tree. And you'll always be in pictures with me.
Beautiful. Thank you.
That was 5x7 from Coby Langham and the Citizens Band's Years on the Road record, performed for us live at the Mid-America Trucking Show. Other tracks you heard pieces of throughout include All American and Sally Ann the Coal Truck. Find more from Langham in the post that houses this podcast for August 12th, 2022 at overdriveonline.com/overdrive-radio. Overdrive Radio is a production of Overdrive, the voice of the American trucker. It's edited and produced by me, Todd Dills, with the acoustic guitar and other support of trucker-songwriter and Overdrive contributor Long Haul Paul Marhoefer, who of course we heard today. Theme is Legend of the Snake Man by Marhoefer, featuring the guitar work of Travis, the Snake Man himself, Womack. Terry Two Socks Richardson on bass. Keys by Tishomingo Jim Whitehead. And on drums, Andrew Marshall. The podcast is backed up further by Overdrive's own news editor Matt Cole, social media coordinator Holly Young, and executive editor Alex Locke.
That's great. No way.
Here, we're getting married here.
No way.
Yeah.
Until next time, keep it pride.